Hey guys, Enriquez here. I wanted to give you a quick update at the outset before we get started today. We have some really good news on the pro-life front, and this good news dropped just a few hours after Joe and I finished recording. And so that news is that a judge out of Texas named Judge Matthew Kaczmarek issued a ruling in a case called Alliance for Hippocratic Medicine versus U.S. Food and Drug Administration. Now, this case was brought by pro-life medical professionals against the FDA, which approved the abortion pill more than 2 decades ago. And it says that the FDA's approval of the abortion drug was illegal in the first place. There's a very, very strong case that this is true, and Judge Kaczmarek agreed. So, although this case still has to go through a number of legal hurdles, the ultimate outcome, the hoped-for outcome of this case is that the abortion pill will be banned in the United States. The abortion pill, as we talk about in this episode, it's killed millions of children. It has wounded and harmed and killed many, many mothers. And it shouldn't be on the shelves of any abortion facility, any pharmacy, or any underground online network in the United States. So it's possible this case will go all the way to the Supreme Court, but this is truly a huge and historic step. So please keep this case in your prayers as it makes its way through the legal system. As you would expect, as soon as it came out, there was a competing case that was released, and there will be challenges to this case. I want to read you what I thought was the most incredible quote from this case. So, Judge Kaczmarek acknowledged that it's common to use the term fetus to refer to the preborn child in court cases. He makes the case in his ruling that we should be calling these people unborn humans or unborn children. He says jurists often use the word fetus to inaccurately identify unborn humans in unscientific ways. The word fetus refers to a specific gestational age of development. He says, because other jurists use the term unborn human or unborn child interchangeably, and because both terms are inclusive of the multiple gestational stages relevant to the FDA approval, this court uses unborn human or unborn child terminology throughout this order as appropriate. That's a huge deal. And so we wanted to give you this good news. Joe did a great Instagram Live on Friday reacting to the news. We'll keep you updated, but we're going on maternity leave, as we say in our episode. So make sure you're following your favorite pro-life organizations on social media. Check out Joe's Instagram Live from last week and keep this case in your prayers.
Hi, welcome to Wild and Beautiful. We're Joanna Hyatt and Lauren Enriquez, your co-hosts who every week are helping you live out your faith in a way that's biblically rooted but culturally relevant.
All right, Lauren, I got a pregnancy delivery question for you.
Okay.
Because we like to be controversial on this show. Are you an epidural or non-epidural type person?
100% epidural.
I know. Which is surprising, y'all, because she does CrossFit. Like
she friend
tires.
A friend at the gym was like, "What's your birth plan?" And I said, "I'm going to get an epidural." And she was looking at me like she was waiting for the rest. And I was like, "Oh no, that's it.
That's it. I get the epidural, and then at some point the baby arrives."
I mean, there's ways I'd like it to go, but if you've ever had a baby, you are aware things don't go the way that you would like them to go. So I at least will go through it without pain. After I do labor for a few hours and earn the epidural in my mind. I earned it. Then I get the epidural and let nature do the rest. So what about you?
I do not get epidurals.
I know.
My husband thinks I'm crazy. He's like, you can. I'm like, yeah, I know. But at this point, I've done it 4 times without.
Yeah.
Let's just keep going.
She's a she woman.
But I would like to just go into labor spontaneously. So the last one, I had to be induced because I had high blood pressure. Might have had something to do with the fact that I was traveling and helping host a gala for our job at 36 weeks, but I digress.
Could have been
so
that.
That's my only hope. I think if I go into labor just on my own, man, I already prepped my husband. I was like, you better be ready to catch this baby. And he just looked horrified at me. I was like, you could watch one video. I mean, you've been there for 4 of them. So surely if we're on the way and it's just like pull over, I feel like I'll have to catch the baby.
Man.
But I think we'll get there. I'm like weirdly excited. I'm like, this can be great. This is going to be great. I'm pumped.
An attitude that is good for going into childbirth. I am going to be induced several weeks early because I have a liver condition that is dangerous for the baby. So your prayers are greatly appreciated. And I'm pretty much guaranteed to get a fifth epidural because when they induce you, those contractions are no joke. As you know, you were induced one time.
But I was not induced with Pitocin. It also depends, ladies, if you've not had a child yet, how you get induced matters. Like I was so close that it was kind of a very light inducement. And then I just walked the halls all day and hung out by myself and listened to podcasts and knitted because I'm a grandma having a child. I am now, technically. I'm a geriatric pregnancy.
But you weren't then. You were just a grandma in spirit.
It's true. And then Andrew showed up an hour and a half before. My mom walked in the door 15 minutes before and we had the baby. So
nice.
Pitocin is a whole different level. And you need an epidural for that or your body's going to break.
Yeah. For those of you that don't know, Pitocin is a synthetic form of oxytocin, the natural pregnancy hormone that makes you go into labor. But the synthetic form, I don't know if they just haven't mastered it or if they made it extra strong on purpose, but it creates way different contractions.
So for that, I'm like, heck yes, get the epidural. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No wonder. There's no like normal transition. And we say all this, friends, because we are very close to having our babies. If you are just listening for the first time, Lauren and I are like 3 weeks to a month, 6 weeks out, depending on our due dates, from having each of us our fifth, which is pretty great. We did not plan that. So it's pretty fun that we're both having our fifth.
God did.
Close to each other. God did, which is convenient because we're going to have to, take a little bit of a maternity leave on the podcast. But don't worry, you're not going to be left alone because we care that much about you. So producer Kyle, who is just wonderful. You've probably heard him a couple times. He did a great episode on pornography. That was his latest one that he did with me. And then he's done an interview with Lauren. He has graciously offered to step in and he'll be doing just short 10, 15 minute weekly episodes, part spiritual, part political, trying to make sure that the content keeps going while also understanding he is not a woman. He is not Catholic, but he very much supports what we're about. So
yeah, I'm actually really excited about this. Producer Kyle is a very interesting character with always something that makes me think, wow, I never thought of it that way. So, we're going to be listening in while we're on maternity leave to our own podcast, which is kind of awesome. I already let him know that the Catholic representation is going to stay in the show because I'm going to give him John Paul II and catechism quotes to read while he's hosting.
They may or may not have anything to do with what he's talking about.
There'll just be random things that he will just make note that Enriquez told him he had to read this, so he's going to do it.
Yeah. So I hope you will stick around and listen to that. We'd love you to engage with that content. As always, if you are subscribed to the podcast, you'll just automatically get the new shows into your favorite app, which is a great way to make sure that you are following along and you'll know when we come back. We might even let Kyle be the one to tell you when we've had our kids. Oh, the fun thing you should know, P.S., is Lauren knows what she's having and I do not.
Well, we're both having humans. We do know that. But sex-wise.
My daughter did the other day go, it's not a monkey. I was like, it's not a monkey. Good job.
I'm having my fourth boy, so that makes 1 girl and 4 boys. Joanna is either having her first boy or her fifth girl.
And I decided this time not to find out. So really, you should be subscribing to the podcast just to know what I have.
Mm-hmm. I'm excited. I'm actually really annoyed that she didn't find out because I think I want to know more than she does, but I have to wait
my
just
husband
like everybody
was not
else.
On board with this. In fact, he is so convinced we're having a fifth daughter, he will not entertain a male name. I'm like, no, but we should come up with a boy name. He's like, I won't. It's not happening. I'm like, but just in case, there's like a 50%. He's like, nope. So you'll know if it's a boy that we came up with that name in the hospital.
Yeah. It'll be a great name, though. Your kids have really cool names.
We go epic or go home.
Mm-hmm.
This ties into, we're talking about babies. And of course, wouldn't be Wild and Beautiful podcast if we didn't kind of go out with a bang talking about the flip side of babies. Abortion. Because we haven't done one in a bit. There's some stuff in the news. But we also just always want to keep it kind of front of mind because, again, it is the greatest human rights abuse of our time. The fact that children are not even making it alive out of the womb, that women are being lied to about their bodies, about what's happening in their bodies, about their potential. So we want to always kind of keep it before you all so that it is there for you to remember that this is happening in a lot of your communities. Maybe you're some of the lucky ones who now live in a state where this is no longer legal, but it's still happening in America. It's still happening worldwide. And so we will keep talking about it as long as it still is taking place.
Mm-hmm. Amen. Yep. So I thought it would be interesting if we kind of talk about the two big threats that are slowing us down when it comes to ending abortion, or I don't know if slowing us down, they are slowing us down. But the two big things that the pro-life movement needs to be tackling right now, in my humble opinion, are the abortion pill and Planned Parenthood. Probably neither one of those things will surprise you if you're following abortion at all. But the abortion pill, I think the movement and we as believers need to make a bit of a mindset shift, because I think most of us grew up in an age when Planned Parenthood and abortion facilities was where you would go for 100% of your abortions, and they were almost all surgical abortions. So they were procedures that were committed or performed by an individual on your body. And that shifted a while back, and it has been something that's been hard to keep up with how fast the abortion pill has become the method of choice for women seeking abortion. So the abortion pill now accounts for more than half of all the abortions that take place in the U.S. And as of COVID, when activists used the COVID pandemic as an excuse to loosen regulations on the abortion pill, you don't even have to go to a Planned Parenthood or an abortion facility to obtain these drugs. The abortion pill is a 2-drug combination. The first drug was literally designed to kill children. It's not a drug that has like the off-label use of abortion. It's a drug that was created to kill children, called mifepristone. Now, thanks to radical abortion supporters within the federal government, the abortion pill can just be shipped to your door. And so Joe made a comment earlier about how a lot of states have outlawed abortion, which is awesome. I live in one of them, Texas. The problem is abortions are still rampant here because these drugs are being trafficked into our state from other states and other countries. And so one of the next big frontiers for the pro-life movement and for legislation is to stop this abortion drug trafficking. There's a lot of different pieces of legislation that are being proposed across the country to try to figure out how to tackle this, but just something to be aware of. The states that have outlawed abortion, it's awesome that they have done that, but it hasn't stopped abortion from happening in those states.
That's a good clarification, because we can lull ourselves into thinking, oh, my legislature passed this law or we voted on this constitutional amendment, we're good. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter what happens over in communist Washington state. We're safe. We're safe here in Florida. We're safe here in Texas, in Nashville, in Idaho. And that's a great distinction of like, actually, you're not. Mm-hmm. The babies in your state are not. And maybe I'll get in trouble for saying this. I think the abortion pill movement caught the pro-life movement by surprise. Mm-hmm. I don't think we were well prepared for that. And I say that as somebody who has worked in it, who has fundraised in it, and it sort of just appeared out of nowhere. Yeah, but the reality is nothing appears out of nowhere. It's a quiet, deliberate building of, resources or persuading people or alliances. And so that when it bursts onto the scene, it's really strong and it's hard to combat from a sort of a direct confrontational approach. But don't lose hope, friends, because we're not here to be the downers, but to just give you a dose of reality. Let's back up to explain what the pill does, mm-hmm. if that's okay. Because I don't know that everybody knows always clearly, and we want you to be able to walk out. If someone says, well, what's wrong with the pill? We want you to be able to say, like, here's how it works.
That's a good point.
So the first pill, I never can get the names right. So if you want to do the names.
Mifepristone and misoprostol.
Misoprostol. So the first one blocks the child from getting progesterone, which starves the baby. It creates a synthetic progesterone, essentially, that goes where the real progesterone should be coming, and the child starves to death. And that's taken, well, it used to be taken at the facility, the abortion facility. And the reason that that was important was because women were first supposed to confirm that they actually had a viable pregnancy and that they had
the uterus.
In the uterus, correct. In the uterus, not just an ectopic pregnancy.
Because this is deadly to take if you have an ectopic pregnancy.
And an ectopic pregnancy left untreated on its own is deadly. Yeah. And so part of the problem with the FDA lifting the regulations, pushed by the abortion industry, by the way, was that it puts women at greater risk. This is never about safety for women. Sorry, friends.
No.
It's always about business and money. So that's the first pill. Second pill used to be, well, I guess now you would just take it, 24 hours later?
Yeah, it depends on the regimen that you're looking at.
You take it and it's meant to expel the child. Now, this is where it gets a little convoluted in the sense that, and this is where the abortion industry, I think, preys, P-R-E-Y-S, on women who have miscarriage. Because that second one, I took that when I had a miscarriage because my body, while the child had already died, my body was not passing everything along. And so they convoluted to say, well, if you outlaw this, you will prevent women who have miscarried from being able to. Totally false.
Yes.
Totally
We're
false.
not trying to outlaw misoprostol, which is a good drug that is used for bad reasons in the abortion drug regimen. We are trying to outlaw mifepristone, which was created by the same company that originally created Zyklon B gas, which was used in Nazi death chambers to mass exterminate Jews.
Y'all let that sit for a second.
I'm not exaggerating, not making that up. You can go track down the history for yourself. The organization Live Action has a really good timeline of the breakdown. The company that makes mifepristone is a subsidiary of the company, the German company, Huxt something, that created Zyklon B for the Nazis. So this is a company that's versed in creating drugs that are designed to kill people. Misoprostol by itself can be used to commit an abortion at high enough doses without mifepristone being involved, but that'd be a case where you have a drug that's being used off-label to commit an abortion, but mifepristone was specifically designed to make that happen.
So you have one pill that kills, one pill that expels. As we've said, the problems can be 1, ectopic pregnancy, 2, you could take these pills further along than has purportedly been considered safer. I can't even say those words seriously.
I know.
But, and that happens again too. It was happening even when women were going into facilities because it was being pushed, just push the envelope a little bit. We'll just add another week here and there. But it can create complications for the woman who, again, is having to experience this abortion at home on her own without really any prep as to what's about to happen to her body, what she's going to see. Nothing. And there are lots and lots of stories online of women talking about the bleeding, the clumps, the baby that they see that they just were not prepared for by the abortion industry. Because it's not really about being informed. And we're not saying this as cynics. We're just saying this based on the stories. If you were informed, you'd know what you were getting into. But to inform a woman might mean she changes her mind. So it's these 2 pills. Now, I do want to offer hope. Were you planning on talking about the abortion pill reversal?
No, you can.
Yes. Okay, so the abortion pill reversal is really cool. Because in the midst of all this, you have these 2 pills and you think, well, it's over. And yet a doctor out of California has developed a regimen and a way to try to reverse that first pill. It doesn't work 100% of the time, but it is pretty effective. There's been hundreds of babies that have been saved, and we will link to that hotline, that site in our show notes. But if a woman takes that first pill and then she suddenly realizes, oh no, I did not want to do this. I actually do not want to lose this child. She can reach out and they will connect her to the closest doctor possible, who's a part of their network. And that doctor will first confirm whether or not there's still a heartbeat and then work to try to save the baby. I believe with estrogen and progesterone shots. And there are babies that are saved. And it's incredible.
Yeah, and as Joe said earlier, the way that mifepristone works is by cutting off a woman's supply of progesterone. It puts fake progesterone into the progesterone receptors so that the real progesterone can't nourish the baby and grow the uterine lining, et cetera. So what the abortion pill reversal method is, it's an extremely safe, very well-tested method. Tested in the sense that doctors have been using progesterone as a pregnancy supplement for years, for decades. Progesterone, I've taken it in all of my pregnancies. It's a natural hormone. And so when you have abortion pill reversal, you're just receiving extra progesterone. And the idea is that the progesterone that's given to you in the abortion pill reversal process is going to compete with the fake progesterone that is in mifepristone. Try to get into those receptors before the fake progesterone can come in and cut off the baby's supply of nutrition, et cetera. So you will hear scaremongering if you Google about abortion pill reversal, saying that it can cause birth defects and that progesterone therapy is not safe and lots of other things that are just not really supported by medical evidence.
And when women call, say, Planned Parenthood to say, I regret that I did this, what do I do? They are part of that fear-mongering, and they offer no alternatives. And I know this because when I worked at Live Action, one of the projects I got to help lead was contacting and collecting stories from women who have themselves gone through the abortion pill reversal. And so these are firsthand accounts of women who walked out of Planned Parenthood and said, oh no, what have I done? And they said, too bad, so sad. Nothing you can do. And if you try to do something, your baby will be a disaster. And not all of these women's babies were saved, but a lot of them have gone on to have very healthy, thriving children. And it's pretty incredible to see the stories. And I just think so beautiful that God, in some way, like that's an example to me of God offering redemption in the midst of choices that, you make these choices for any number of reasons and then realize, oh no. And for God to have a way for there to be a chance at redemption and a chance at life, I think is pretty amazing. So that brings us to Planned Parenthood.
Yeah. And I'll just note as we move along to talk about Planned Parenthood in the typical abortion industry they're not the only ones that are sending out the abortion pill to women. They're underground networks. There's a very nefarious and dangerous trend of underground networks, both in the U.S. and overseas, that are working to make sure that these deadly drugs get into the hands of girls who are pregnant, women who are pregnant, and we have to acknowledge their abusers because there's really no safeguard standing in between these networks that are trafficking the abortion pill and an abuser posing as a pregnant woman. Because once you take away the in-person requirement where a woman has to go in and obtain these drugs from an abortionist in person, there's nothing stopping an abuser from saying his name is Sally and getting these drugs sent to him and then putting them in her smoothie, putting them in her food, putting them into her body against her will. And these are all examples of actual things that have happened with the abortion drug and abuse of men. So that's when people say this is about women having access, even if you don't understand or care that the abortion pill kills a child, it's not safe or empowering for women. So putting that out there as well. But Planned Parenthood does remain one of the biggest, baddest players in this space, both domestically and overseas. And so we're going to talk a little bit today about why it's imperative to kind of go after Planned Parenthood, keep them at the front of your mind. And one of the ways so we've talked a lot about how Planned Parenthood is promoting abortion, committing abortion. They're the largest abortion provider in the country. Most abortion providers are much smaller organizations. Some of them are even independent individual clinics. But Planned Parenthood has hundreds of affiliates all over the country, and they have a very big footprint overseas. But one thing I'd like to talk about today is not just Planned Parenthood's influence on the abortion side, but their cultural influence in propping up all of the other things that are keeping abortion legal and accessible. And so we've talked about transgenderism. Planned Parenthood is the second largest purveyor of cross-sex hormones in the United States. And then sex ed, obviously, is something that we should get into because we've got a resident sex ed expert here in Miss Joanna Hyatt. I recently read a stat about Planned Parenthood. I did not realize how much money they received from the government for sex ed specifically. So out of 243 federal sex ed grants, Planned Parenthood has 194 of them. So I don't know off the top 38? Of my head, is that 1 in 5? They have like
38 they don't have out of 234.
No, they've
got everything else.
48,
right?
47. They don't have 47. 194. Oh, you're right. Okay, yeah. I'm reading the numbers backwards.
Listen, I couldn't add my SAT scores correctly, so it's possible that I'm not accurate.
You guys can fact check our math. The point is 80% of all sex ed funding at a federal level is going to Planned Parenthood. And evidently, a lot of conservative states are under the impression that Planned Parenthood is offering abstinence education.
Please no.
Which is how Planned Parenthood somehow convinced conservative legislators of this, and that's why they're in conservative states. So, Joe, you can take it from there.
That would be like saying like the gun lobby has come in and they are teaching gun restrictions and how to advocate for gun laws that limit access to guns. That's like not even where you could take that to the tobacco. I mean, there's just, it's so silly because that wouldn't even actually, from just a practical sense, that wouldn't make business sense for Planned Parenthood. Why would they come into a school and push abstinence and try to encourage an entire generation to not be sexually active in order to delay pregnancy, to not get an STD, when their whole business model is based off of you being sexually active? They don't make money if you are STD free. They don't make money if you don't need a pregnancy test. You don't decide to have an abortion. They don't make money if you don't so hate your body that they can then offer the cross-sex hormones. Like, it's just, come on, conservatives and Republicans, think it through. Think it through.
We've obviously failed. We've obviously failed in educating about Planned Parenthood if there are conservative legislators who are like, oh yeah, Planned Parenthood doing abstinence education. I don't see any red flags there.
Which, for those of you in states where you're like, okay, abortion has been made illegal, you now got it, and maybe it's coming through the mail, but I don't know how to stop that. You should still check who's doing the sex education in your public schools. And I would say too, don't just stop at, oh, it's not Planned Parenthood, because there's organizations that work with Planned Parenthood that cross-share their curriculum, that Planned Parenthood has helped to write their curriculum, that are promoting the same messages that Planned Parenthood would promote. Here's the really insidious part, and I say this with experience for how it has happened in Washington State. So a lot of your states have requirements for what has to be taught. And they also have requirements for kind of what curriculum qualifies to then have a teacher pick. A district can pick, maybe from 3 or 4 options. They usually are given some choices on what curriculum. But here's where it gets really sneaky. Who do you think has helped these legislators write the requirements for what curriculum will qualify?
So cute.
So cute. So cute. So then, and this happened in Washington, right?
The answer is Planned Parenthood, if you didn't figure that out.
Planned Parenthood. Always Planned. Because what happens then is they say, okay, well, yeah, here's the qualifications for a curriculum to be considered acceptable to be used in a district. Oh, wait, what? We're the only ones that qualify.
Oh, how did that happen?
Or if it's not us, it's, advocates for youth, or it's something very similar. And so then when a district says, well, we're just trying to follow, we're limited, because the district will always try to punt. We're limited by these guidelines or these recommendations or requirements even that the state education department has mandated. And they've said the only ones that qualify is this, where there's nothing we can do about it.
Yeah.
And then that's how Planned Parenthood gets in. And they get $150,000 here, $150,000 there from a district adopting their curriculum. And whether if a teacher teaches it, it's still that curriculum. And if they don't, Planned Parenthood has a representative who will come in and teach directly to your kids.
Yeah.
Establishing themselves as a trusted source for children, so that when those kids then go, oh my goodness, I think I might be pregnant. Where should I go? Oh, I remember Planned Parenthood. I mean, it's really a smart business strategy.
It is.
But it's again, not for you to feel hopeless, for you to say, okay, so how do we go and get them out of our schools?
Right. That's right. And I think what we should all view Planned Parenthood as is the kingpin of the abortion industry. So if you're looking at a cartel or a mafia or a gang network, there's usually somebody at the top, like El Chapo, who is kind of puppeteering and controlling how this broken system works. And in Planned Parenthood's case, in the case of abortion in America, I strongly believe, and I believe you can make the case, that the abortion industry cannot stand without Planned Parenthood. Why? Because Planned Parenthood is creating the clients who need abortions with these sex ed programs that Joe just described. Planned Parenthood is funding the politicians who are keeping the abortion industry legal. So Planned Parenthood pours tens of millions of dollars into presidential campaigns every 4 years, and they pour tons of money into everything from, Planned Parenthood funded candidates for our last school board race in Houston. Planned Parenthood funds state level campaigns. They fund federal campaigns. They have deep, deep relationships within the federal bureaucracy. They've got friends in the Department of Health and Human Services and the FDA. Planned Parenthood is deeply recognized, I think maybe even before we did, how important these political connections and political power was going to be, and they have it. So if you remove Planned Parenthood's massive profits from the abortion industry equation, they can no longer fund all of the politicians' campaigns, et cetera, that are keeping abortion legal. So this is a huge piece of it. And then Planned Parenthood, like I said, has hundreds of affiliates across the country. So they're embedding themselves in communities. They're becoming a go-to place. In a lot of cities, if you found a woman and asked her, and Students for Life did this. Students for Life of America has a campaign called the Campaign for Abortion-Free Cities. They go into neighborhoods nationwide, grassroots, boots on the ground, and knock on people's doors. And they say, do you know where to go if you or someone that you love is pregnant? People all know about Planned Parenthood or their local abortion facility. Like 85% of them don't know about pregnancy centers, though. So the kind of default of what you do in the case of an unexpected pregnancy is to go to Planned Parenthood. We have to be aware of the cultural hold that Planned Parenthood has on our communities, on our nation, on Hollywood, on politics, so that we can begin to cripple them. And I believe in so doing, really, really take out the American abortion industry as a whole, because the rest of these mom and pop abortion facilities, they really can't exist without Planned Parenthood upholding the entire structure that's keeping abortion afloat in America.
Well, because these smaller ones can't afford to have somebody in the schools. They can't afford to have a lobbyist. They can't afford to donate to political campaigns. So they're letting Planned Parenthood run cover for them, essentially. And Planned Parenthood's done a great job where people think, oh, it's just a nonprofit. Surely they can't. And we get into the technicalities of a, C3 versus C4. But the reality is, $500 million of taxpayer money goes to prop up Planned Parenthood. And that money has increased under Republican administrations. That money has not been, removed like it should have been under Republican administrations, under control of the House and the Senate. So we say this not as a like, oh, it's just the Democrats. We say this as, hey, guess what? Republicans, you should be doing something about this too. If you really wanted to, you could. And they've gotten their tentacles into so many things. It feels a little bit like trying to chop off Medusa's head, but it can be done.
Texas did it. Texas did this with Planned Parenthood. They, after many, many states tried, and Texas cracked the code for kicking Planned Parenthood out of the state Medicaid program. So it can be done. I think Texas kind of created a paradigm. There's still lawsuits going on, but
of course,
Texas did successfully kick Planned Parenthood out of Medicaid. But it took dedication. It took our elected officials seeing that as a priority and the bureaucracy within the state of Texas seeing it as a priority and knowing that it was worth staying the course until Planned Parenthood was removed, despite all of the opposition, despite the lawsuits from Planned Parenthood. Because Planned Parenthood's method of squashing opposition is just to sue you into oblivion, which they try to do with every pro-life law, with every effort to remove them from Medicaid. But, I look at Texas and I look at some other states, Mississippi with bringing the Dobbs case to the Supreme Court. These individuals and coalitions of political actors in different states that are willing to put up with the backlash in order to remove Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry from their state, they have a huge impact on the rest of the nation. Because when you pass a piece of legislation that works, like when Texas passed the heartbeat law with civil enforcement, it allowed other states to say, oh, that's how we do it, and allowed them to follow suit. Just stay the course if you're working on something to remove Planned Parenthood from your school, to remove Planned Parenthood from your state Medicaid program, to speak out against Planned Parenthood in any way. It's worth the backlash because it's setting a paradigm for other people who can follow in your footsteps and have like a blueprint for how this is done.
And they'll try to intimidate you. If you show up at a school board, you can bet that people on that school board are going to support Planned Parenthood. Trust me, ask me how I know. You might get called names. Ask me how I know. They'll even try to intimidate you. 40 Days for Life just wrapped up across the country. And at our local Planned Parenthood here in Washington State, they had a huge banner, Pledge a Protester. Now, mind you, 40 Days for Life is a peaceful gathering of people to stand and pray. We're not protesting in the way that some people on the left have protested across cities, this is a genuine peaceful protest. And it was Pledge a Protester. And you watch that number go up and you can be discouraged by it and think, oh, maybe I shouldn't show up because Planned Parenthood's going to get more money. Yeah. Maybe I shouldn't stand out there and pray because Planned Parenthood. I watched that number go up and I thought, oh, that means more people are showing up. Fantastic. But they'll try to intimidate you to say, oh, look, we're going to make money off you just standing out here. Oh, yeah. Here in Washington, you can report somebody to the Attorney General's office who has maybe gotten in the way of your ability to have an abortion. So that strikes fear into people's hearts. Oh no, what if I stand in the wrong spot on the sidewalk? It's just better if I don't go out there. And to realize, one, there's a lot at stake. Two, anything worth doing is going to require some risk. It's going to require potential suffering. But in the end, we have the truth on our side. And when you see states, I find it incredibly encouraging to see states like Texas or right next door to us, Idaho, taking steps to protect women and children against this. And you realize it can be done. Hearts can be changed. And so, whatever it is that God might be stirring in you to speak up or to be just a little bit braver, or even just go to your church and say, hey, what are we doing on this issue? How are we talking about it? How are we engaging with the community, whether that's with our local pregnancy clinic or actively pushing against abortion? I have an infographic. We'll put it in the show notes. You can download this to have the steps of how do I work to get Planned Parenthood out of my school, even if your kids don't go to that school, because you know what? It's creating a culture that your kids are growing up in. So it still matters what is happening in our local public schools, even if our kids are in private school or they're homeschooled or you're just like, oh no, my school's fine. So there's steps to take. And I know these announcements can be big, but it's by everybody going after their little piece. I like to say we're going to take Planned Parenthood down by death by 1,000 paper cuts. That's what I would say all the time to my research team at Live Action. I was like, death by 1,000 paper cuts. We will win this, even if it's small and incremental, because truth and goodness and beauty are on our side. Yeah. Not theirs.
Amen. Yeah. And there's been progress. Planned Parenthood was referred to the DOJ for criminal prosecution by the House after David Daleiden Citizen Journalism uncovered really egregious violations of federal law within Planned Parenthoods all over the country. Planned Parenthood has been crippled by the Dobbs decision. If you Google Planned Parenthood and look up the news related to them, every single headline is Planned Parenthood sues, Planned Parenthood sues, Planned Parenthood sues. They're not on the offense right now. They are on the defense. So this is a good time to really consider, like, what is my role in bringing down this organization? Because yes, they may have tons of money, but eventually those 1,000 paper cuts are going to take their toll.
Goliath eventually falls, friends. He does. There is a weakness, and you just have to find it. But Goliath eventually falls. And so do not be intimidated by the money, by the connections, by mass media. This is a good and righteous fight. And as we head off to have our babies, it's a fight to continue having. And having children and having full-time jobs, having full lives, doesn't mean we have to also say, like, well, I can't get to that fight yet. For each of us, there's a way. It's praying, it's advocating, it's writing a letter to the editor. Again, talking to your pastor or your parish priest. Ask the Lord, what is that thing that you would have me do today in the fight for life?